Okay, so let's start this first DigitalFoodLab webinar. So I'm Jeremy from DigitalFoodLab, and we will speak about our experience at Seeds&Chips last month. This webinar is recorded, so you don't have to capture screen, and you will have access to the slides and the video after the recording. And if you have some question to the presenter Matthew, you can ask them with GoToWebinar tool. Thank you. So now I let Matthew speak and do the webinar.
Hi everyone, so my name is Matthew and thanks for Jeremy for the introduction. So first I will introduce DigitalFoodLab. So basically what we do is we work with food corporates, helping them to understand what is happening on the food tech ecosystem. So for that we do 3 steps with our partners. First step is helping them to understand by helping them to know what is happening on the ecosystem with talks and workshops. Second, we work on business intelligence missions with our clients, helping them to identify the best startups to work with, to inspire them, or to invest in. And finally, we work with our clients to identify opportunities to accelerate their business working with startups. But if we are here today is to talk about food tech and our experience at Seeds&Chips. And for that, we'll cover 3 parts. First one will be that what is food tech, because a lot of people are talking about food tech but don't really know what is food tech, and so we'll give you our definition of food tech. Then we'll look at the event Seeds&Chips, key facts about the event, some figures, what we think about this event. And third part, we'll look at the top startups we have identified at the event and trends we have seen there. And finally, fourth part, we'll look at corporates, which one were there, and do you as a corporate need to go to Seeds&Chips? So first, what is food tech? At DigitalFoodLab, we have met and we have looked at thousands of startups, and we have come up with a definition of food tech. For us, food tech is an ecosystem made of all the agri-food entrepreneurs and startups working on innovation about product in distribution, marketing, a business model, which is a pretty broad definition of food tech. We have made 6 different categories about food tech, which are on the slide, and you can look at our website. We have a definition on 31 subcategories of food tech. We would like to give you some data about food tech. We have put together some figures about the investment made in France, into the French ecosystem, French startups on the last year. This report is accessible on our website. So as you see, we have the global figures on the food tech ecosystem, which is rising, and it is almost $9 billion ecosystem with a lot of investment. But if we look at the French ecosystem, it's really small, with less than 1.5% investment global made in French startups. All our data is accessible on our website. We have a proprietary database of food tech startups. But the key things of this webinar is to know, is Seeds&Chips an interesting event? First thing, why Seeds&Chips matters? For us, it's a really interesting event because you can see there a lot of startups at some point, and it's for us the biggest event in Europe talking about food tech and specifically about startups, which is really important for us. Secondly, what it is and what is not. We have talked there to a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of food corporates, and some of them, mostly on the corporate side, were looking to find startups ready to put on the shelves and not startups to work with for innovation. So you have to go to this kind of event looking for startups and not SME or product ready able to go to the shelves. And we think it's a really first step to build an European ecosystem on a first step for that. What we've seen at the event, it's a lot of startups, 140 different startups coming from a lot of countries across Europe, but also USA and some countries in Africa. So the event last year had Barack Obama on stage. This year we had John Kerry talking, former Secretary of State. We think it's a really interesting thing to have these kind of political figures to be there and to be able to put some big names on the ecosystem. But maybe we thought it was more interesting to have talk like the one of the CEO and founder of Starbucks, which was putting more perspective on the startup and food tech ecosystem. Then finally, on this event, key facts of the event, we were really glad to see the launch of Food Forward, new food tech accelerator, which will happen in the next month and which will be based in Milan. Why is that interesting? Because it's the first food tech accelerator on a European scale built by food corporates. And we think it's a really, really good thing to have this kind of thing happening in Europe. Then we'll look at the key trends and key startups we have identified at the event. We'll look at 3 trends. First is transparency, second is new products, among them insects, and third is everything going around the idea of being able to grow your own food as a consumer or to have urban farming. So first is transparency. A lot of blockchain at the event, maybe too much, to be honest. Not a lot of ideas outside blockchain, but some kind of interesting things. Some keynotes interesting with a focus on the idea to have consumers that want retailers and current food retailers and current food corporates to help them having a better lifestyle and food lifestyle. Just to give you 2 examples of interesting startups we have come across. A first one, which is working on a blockchain for food, which is really interesting because it's doing more than a blockchain. This startup, Wenda, is using both the blockchain technology as a software, but also IoT, Internet of Things, to build a small device that is put in the containers, in the shipments, to follow the foods across their travel, and so to give good data about what is happening and then put it in the blockchain. Second startup in this transparency and traceability ecosystem, it was T-Food, a German startup. Why was that interesting? Mostly because it's already working with more than 6,000 business working with this solution, and also because it was the only blockchain solution present at the event that was doing an ICO, so raising money through cryptocurrencies. The startup had raised more than $19 million through cryptocurrency. Second trend was insects and new products, starting with this idea of a meatless future. Seth Goldman, co-founder of Honest and chairman of Beyond Meat, was on stage. One of the best talks we've seen at Seeds&Chips, because he was really embodying the idea of having a meatless future and this conviction to transform how we eat proteins today. He has this vision where tomorrow we won't shop in the meat section for beef and some kind of a meat replacement section in the supermarkets, but a new place which would be called protein aisle in the supermarket, where you will have regular or normal meats and alternatives based on his side on plant-based or synthetic meats. Another conclusion on this meatless future, we have been to a lot of conferences, a lot of talks, and until now it was like, okay, it's coming in the near future, but maybe in 1 year, 2 years, something like that. We had a very different feeling at this conference. Maybe it's a tipping point. Now products, meatless products, substitutes are really present on the shelves. It's here. So it's no more time to think about it as the incoming trend. It's time to think it as something present right now and shaping the future. Another trend to look at was this amount of startup working on the insects, a lot of them. I've put here an example of a Finnish startup, which was doing podders of insects with a B2B business model and selling this powder to other corporates for them to do food and human products. It was really interesting to see how many startup was there about insects, but we had a startup from Finland and one from UK, other from Belgium, Czech Republic. Each other was competing inside this small market of Europe, and it was really difficult for them to go outside their own countries due to difficulties of retail. So I think we have a point to work with in Europe, is to build a retail network for distribution of innovative products. And a second example of innovation, a plant-based innovation with Algama. Its product is the Good Spoon, which is a mayos substitute based on algae. And third trend was about food and water homemade, so on urban farming or the small pods you can be able to put in your place. So what we've seen is a lot of urban farming products, but what was new in this product was this idea of modularity. As you can see on the picture, here this kind of models can be piled up, so you can buy only one for your home, but for a restaurant or an office, you can build 10 or more of them and build some kind of nice thing that is working well together. And so here are two examples on this ecosystem. With a Click and Grow, an Estonian solution of urban farming to build herbs inside your home, and also Do Good, which was answering the theme of the conference, which was about water. It was really interesting to see the solution collecting water through humidity, and so for countries with a lack of proper source of water, it was maybe a good solution. And finally, you can look at our own report on Seeds&Chips with more than 20 startups that we've showcased in this report. And we had the opportunity to talk with almost all the 140 startups on the event. And it was really interesting to put together all these startups. To conclude on this startup part, we'll just look at two startups that we have really liked on the event, even if they are not part of our trends. First is Allelica, maybe because at DigitalFoodLab we have a really deep conviction about DNA using nutrigenomics. We were glad to see a first Italian startups working on this ecosystem. And second maybe for the fun, this solution, Fresco Revolution, which was some kind of an espresso, but for olive oil. Interesting things, interesting business model to look at. So finally, which were the food corporates on there, and should you go there if you're a food corporate? There were a lot of partners at the event, and some of them were there as sponsor partners, but some of them had stands and booths to expose their innovations. As I said, a lot of people that were just coming to look at the event were maybe disappointed if they were looking for products ready to put on the shelf, ready to be used. I think a FoodTech and a startup event has to be really prepared to be interesting for you, and you have to go there looking for innovation and startup to work with. We have seen maybe what we could call bad booths. I would use the example of Arable, which were there to launch vegan candy, which could have been really interesting, but they were like, okay, we are here, but we have a booth, we are exposing our new thing, but we are not able to explain to you why we have done this vegan stuff and how it is vegan. And another way, something that was interesting was Bayer, which was there not really in itself, but to expose startups. So a lot of startups were present on the name of Bayer. So I think it's very good to be invited by a corporate for a startup. And they were also there as to talk in conference, in talks, and to expose how they innovate. So that's pretty much our conclusion about this Seeds&Chips event. We had a really good feeling about it. We see year after year a European ecosystem under construction. We know how hard it is to build something in Europe outside your own country. So we are very glad, and we thank a lot the Seeds&Chips teams for their work to build this ecosystem. If you want to connect with us and to work with us, DigitalFoodLab, just to know that we do discovery work, business intelligence missions, and basically what we propose you is to be connected to the FoodTech ecosystem through our FoodTech Intelligence Watch, which is made of Discovery, which is a monthly newsletter on FoodTech, personalized FoodTech items, and also options to help you either focus on the long-term trends, follow these kind of events like Seeds&Chips, and also scout the right startups for you to inspire, invest in, work with, etc. And so it's now time for question, and I just look at your question. So I have a question. Why is retail network more supportive for innovative products in other countries? I suppose it's to be compared to France. I think problem is not a retail network in France versus other European countries, is to build European markets, because I don't think in the US it's so much easier to go in Walmart, Kroger, and etc. But when you go there, you have an access to much more larger market. But in Europe, you have to go to find an English retailer, a Swedish retailer, a Portuguese retailer, a French retailer. It's a lot of work. All these corporates don't work in the same way. Even if you work, for example, in France with Carrefour, which is present in Italy and other countries, if you're referenced in France, you won't be automatically distributed in Europe and in Italy, for example. So we have to build this FoodTech ecosystem of retailers. what were the countries more represented among the startups? Of course, it was an event in Milan, Italy, so there were a lot of Italian startups. There were a lot of Netherlands, so a lot of startups coming from the Netherlands because they had a specific booth to help them showcase their own startups. So a lot of startups from this country. We were somewhat surprised to see some startups coming from the US just to showcase their innovation in this event. We can also maybe talk about the countries that weren't present at the event. There were really few startups coming from France, and I know there is also a question about the French startups. There were really few startups coming from France, only Algama and Ship Track Control. So that's a really low level of low amount of startups, and maybe also very few startups coming from Russia. What are the domains that were more represented this year that may have been vanished from last year? I think, as we said, a lot of startups were showcasing innovation on the food blockchain and on insects and on urban farming. That were the three main themes. And we have seen very few startups working in things like not so much innovative products like drinks, like snackings. Very few startups compared to other years. Would it be interesting for French corporates to visit the event next year? It could. It is interesting, but you have to think really well why you're going there and what you are expecting to see there. I think it has to be really well prepared, and maybe also to look at all the innovation in the city of Milan. You have a lot of interesting things in the retail industry. So with Jeremy, we have used our time there to look at some innovation like Italy, etc. I think, as we said, we are already going forward the expected time of 20 minutes. So I will answer the questions by mail directly. You can reach me through my email, mathieu@digitalfoodlab.com, or directly on Twitter @DigitalFoodLab. And also you can reach me by phone, and we'll answer all your questions. As we said sooner, the slides and the recording will be available within 24 hours. Thank you. Bye.